Welcome to the Uplift, where we are uplifting our lives, uplifting each other, and uplifting our communities together. Thank you for joining myself, Sai Herrera, and Tessa Savala here, two women, two attorneys, doing it our way, and inviting you here each week to share in on the stories, advice, and life lessons we've picked up along our journeys that keep us uplifted, and that will hopefully do the very same thing for you. Now buckle in and let's get ready to be uplifted.
Hello, everyone. As always, I am Tessa, and I am joined by the most phenomenal woman on the planet, Sai.
My favorite compliment. Well, only second to you, Tessa. I'm honored and blessed to be in your presence as always. Excited for this conversation.
So I want to talk about something that we talk about frequently and recently showed up in my world as I was working on some forms, and I discovered that Sweden only, of which I am Swedish, only acknowledges citizenship through the mother. So it is a very matriarchal society. It doesn't matter who your father is. It is citizenship. It only transfers through a mother. And I thought, that is fascinating, especially living in the United States at this time where I feel like whether it is blatant or subtle, the patriarchy is alive and well and kicking and blooming. And, yeah, it's a thing. And I feel as though, at least in my political world, it is something that people don't want to talk about.
Don't want to talk about and are discouraged to talk about, and the eye rolls when you talk about it. And why? Why do you think it is that people either don't want to talk about it or are very discouraged from talking about it?
I mean, I'm going to go out on a limb and say power, right? Like, I mean, I don't understand how people don't think there's room at the table for everybody, especially when all the academic data says that the best decisions, including political decisions and business decisions, are made when there is a diverse group of people by gender, by ethnic backgrounds, by religions, because then one, viewpoint doesn't dominate.
Yeah.
And I have sat through so many meetings where I was one of maybe two women at the table, and you see it, right? Like, every woman has a story where she explains what she thinks the strategy should be, and nobody pays attention. And then a man says the exact same thing, and it is like the most profound statement ever made. And you're sitting there going like, what the actual F is happening? Because just said that exact same thing.
Twilight Zone moment, yeah.
Yes, and it's...
Absolutely.
And I don't even know if it's intentional sometimes.
I don't know either. I think
right?
about that all the time. Like, are you doing it on purpose, or like literally just to like, this is just the way that you absorb information?
I don't even know if they're absorbing the information, because I have heard more than one time a man of a certain age say, "I'm sorry, I have a really hard time hearing women's voices." Do you?
Are you serious? I've never actually heard someone say that. That's so wild.
Isn't it wild? It's like,
wow.
What is happening?
That's terrifying. On top of everything else, like literally just, stealing the voices. That's crazy. Yeah. I think that, the idea of patriarchy is one in which, people don't necessarily think about it on a day-to-day. I feel like when you feel slighted in those moments, you feel slighted. You're like, okay. I just said that, but okay. One time that happened to me, and it was actually by another woman, and she said, did you just say that? And I said, yeah, but it sounds so much better coming from you. Like,
but that sounds like you're like diminishing yourself. I mean, I understand like in social mores that you have to like find a way to ease into it and, make it not a moment, but highlight that it is a moment.
Yeah.
But at the same time,
was aware at some point.
Yeah. It's just, wow.
Yeah. And I think that, we often take those little moments, and they're there's this beautiful and kind of gory um, art rendition, this painting that Frida Kahlo did, who's one of my favorite artists ever, Mexican artist, and she, she's seen this terrible news story of somebody who had a woman who had been killed by her husband, and he had stabbed her to death, and he had stabbed her like, I don't know, like 150 times or something insane, like something crazy. And he said, oh, it's just a little prick or something crazy like that. And they published that in the newspaper. So she read that and she made an incredible piece of art. And I got to see the original in Philadelphia once. And it was so powerful because it showed not just the painting of, a woman with these wounds and everything, but on the outside of the frame, there was literal like stabbing marks all around the frame too that she had made. And it was just so powerful because to me, it showed, the reason I'm bringing it up is that's what I literally thought of when I thought about the little infractions. It's just a little prick, right? And it's like we go
Yep.
through our day and people say these hurtful things, or they do these hurtful things, and they pretend like this man in the newspaper that, it's no big deal. And he literally killed this woman. And it makes me think about how many of those little, stabbings, these little pricks that we endure, these little, jabs that we endure day to day, and we don't name it patriarchy. We don't think about it as patriarchy. We don't even necessarily like give it weight. But it doesn't mean that the injury has not occurred, right?
Yes. And sometimes I feel as though those injuries can not only be like to us individually, but it could be to us as a collective. I've just made me think about the recent videos that have surfaced of the president calling the U.S. men's hockey team that won gold and then making what I found to be very intentional jokes about women. The women's hockey team, who, let's note, also won gold, and
Right.
their goalie like blocked a lot more goals than the
Mm-hmm.
men's goalie did. So perhaps a higher standard with the women's team. But they were belittled. I'm sure they also had less funding because that seems to be the norm.
Right.
And it seems as though it's become so, like, say 2008-ish, I felt as though things were getting better, right? Like we had a president who brought to light a lot of people who felt that they were otherwise othered at some point in time. And I felt as though maybe people were toning down their isms, like all the isms.
Mm-hmm.
Sexism, racism,
Mm-hmm.
homophobia, which apparently is not an ism, but should be, it is. But now it just feels as though it's empowered more, right? Like people are glossing over
Mm-hmm.
patriarchal choices and decisions and impacts in a way that I don't think I've ever seen before. Like
The
before they were
pendulum.
quiet, but now it's like
Yeah.
intentional and everybody knows that it's happening. And
Yeah.
it's frustrating. It's frustrating being a woman at this point in time.
And it reminds me of the 2-year-old who's testing the boundaries, right?
Oh yeah.
And
Yep.
I have to share those just because, but I was reading something on psychology the other day that was talking about bipolar disorder and narcissistic personality disorder. So like DSM diagnosed, conditions, mental health disorders. And they were saying that people who actually have narcissistic personality disorder are operating at an emotional maturity level of 7 years old. And
This seems
it
like
makes sense, right?
life.
Is it making sense?
Yes.
Is making it
Oh
make sense,
yes.
right? And then people who are living with bipolar disorder are literally operating at an emotional maturity level of a 2-year-old.
Uh,
And
but it
so the reason
put
I brought
through.
that up is like literally when you said that, I was like, that's just like a 2-year-old, like just testing the boundaries
Yeah.
and seeing what they can get away with, right? And so, yeah, people are getting away with a lot right now. And
Hmm.
women and, people who have always been traditionally oppressed, like people of color and people of the trans and queer experience, like all these
Hmm.
people are the ones who are suffering, right? And when people who want to get away with those things are encouraged by other people who want them to get away with those things and they want to get away with those things, like the culture is building in the wrong direction. Absolutely. And what kind of things do you see in the world in terms of like being a woman, going through this space and time and seeing this kind of behavior from folks? Like, how do you personally just operate? Like, how do you navigate that? Like, do you have to care for yourself? Do you have to do things in the moment or do you not? Like, how do you operate and
This
navigate?
is going to be one of the probably saddest things I've ever said. So I'm going to get through it without crying, I hope.
Hmm.
I think the way I'm able to get through it is because I saw so much patriarchy in my family childhood home.
Hmm.
And it started with my younger brother telling me that we were in America now and I needed to speak quote unquote American, right? And it went beyond that, right? Like neither
Hmm.
my father nor my brother understood what to do with a intelligent, strong-willed
Hmm.
woman.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I think having gone through that as a child, that once you get out into the real world, quote unquote, I don't want to say that I'm immune to it. It sucks still to this day, but I realize that this is not about me. This is
Hmm.
about their insecurities and, if I'm
Hmm.
going to be frank, how weak and pathetic they are.
Yeah, and you learned your lessons early, basically. I often think like, why would sometimes I think we've chosen these lives, and I think, well, why would I choose this kind of like circumstance? Why would I choose
Right?
that? But I do think it's what you're saying is that like you learned your lessons really early, right? You
Yeah.
learned how to understand like that this is not about you because I'm sure at first it felt like it was. I mean, I'm
Oh,
assuming,
absolutely.
right? And then
Hmm.
at some point you got to a place where you understood actually this is about them, and not me, which is
Hmm.
often the case with all of the isms and phobias, right? Um, so I wonder now, like in your day to day, based on the fact that, you had these early life lessons, what does that look like in your day to day? Like, does that look like you just, clocking that, understanding that that's what's happening, but not saying anything? Like, do you say something? Um, do you
I
feel
find
the
it,
pain at all? Do you have to tend to it?
I do. I journal a lot. And then by journaling, I realize who is just, I guess I'm going to say sexist.
Hmm.
Yeah, misogynistic. Because those people who are sexist and misogynistic, most of them do not think that they are.
Mm,
And it's
of
either a
course.
conscious or they know nothing other than to be sexist and misogynistic from an unconscious standpoint.
It's just the water for them.
It
Yeah.
is, and it's frustrating. I find it easier to speak up when it's not about me and it's about
Mm,
somebody else. Like it's easier
mm,
to protect another person than it is to protect myself. And I also do a
mm.
sort of calculation in my head about risk reward and whether or not it's worth spending the time saying anything, especially if it's in a public place. If it's one-on-one, I'm the first person to say. And I think I usually take this step, but I say, so to me, this feels very patriarchal and misogynistic. Is
Hmm.
that what your intent is?
Mm.
Right? So I make them think about it as opposed to,
Just telling them what it is. Yeah.
right, because I find that people will not change unless they want to change.
Mm.
And I don't think they want to change unless they hear that they are causing harm to other people. Because I don't think, I'm going to say 51% don't realize they're being sexist and misogynistic
Or harmful to your point,
or harmful.
probably. Right?
Hmm.
Sometimes they think they're helping.
Oh yeah. Hmm.
So I'm just trying to help her
And they're
get
not.
better. Yeah.
Let's be clear. They are
To be
not
clear.
helping.
Yes. And I
Right?
love that you have that positioning of being like, let me make you think about this. Like, and making it just like, well, this is how I see the thing. And that's in a one-on-one, but you also said you find it easier to protect other people. So I'm going to
Hmm.
ask you what my good friend Tessa kind of asked me in one way in the past, which is, and who's protecting Tessa?
Yeah. I don't know. I think
Hmm.
it is you should always check on your strongest friend
Mhm. Mhm.
or acquaintance. And I think it's, I am very, very fortunate that I have a husband who is, I'm going to say on any given day, a better feminist than I am. And that is because he was raised by a feminist in a very patriarchal culture.
Hmm.
And he will call me out on my misogyny when it's so ingrained in
Mhm.
me that I don't even realize
Mm.
that I
It's
have held.
showing
And
up.
yeah. And
Mhm.
it does sometimes, right? Like
Mhm.
say it's, oh, well, I wouldn't say that. I was like trying to think of an example. I'm like, well, a woman should do this, but I can't imagine myself ever saying that. But
No.
he catches me, and now I can't even think what it is because maybe he's done a good job explaining to me, hello, the United States did a
But
number on you because your Swedish
yeah.
side would not accept any of this.
Well, people, I think sometimes, maybe not you today, but like maybe in the past, or maybe any of us uh, lesser mortals, like some of us might see a situation, and I think instead of us being blatantly sexist, like we would in the past, right, as a society, like in the
Right.
50s, we'd be like, a woman should not be an executive. That would be crazy, right? Like that's just blatant race, or blatant sexism and misogyny, right? But today, instead of it being that, like what I've been seeing in a lot of psychology reads is like people don't come out and necessarily say something, incredibly misogynistic and archaic in those ways. Like, and the people that do, we look at them like dinosaurs. Like, what is
Right.
them? Actually, that made me think of something. One day there was a patriarchy like the event or something, and they wanted a piñata. So I didn't know what piñata to get, but I got the dinosaur because I was like, this the
That's funny.
patriarchy is a relic that should be beaten out of history. Thank you. So, I think that today, if you're not just like an old school sexist misogynist, which is basically unacceptable, which is nice actually. Like I think we do have to like recognize the little bit of progress that's been made, right? Like I mean, and there's regression 100%. But I feel like at least in most circles, like that kind of blatant misogyny is like not accepted. People are just like, come on now. That's insane to say, right? But it shows
I
it
like to think
differently.
so.
You would like
It
to think
does.
so. Except for you've been coming through with examples where I'm like, really?
Well, I mean, I remember being
You're in
in
a
a
different
meeting.
space. Yeah.
I remember being in a meeting. I was the only woman. There was
Mhm.
me and say 6 other attorneys, all decades older than I am.
Mhm.
And I think the oldest man in the group said this to me, little lady, you possibly couldn't understand.
Come
This,
on.
no, I am serious. This is
That's
Texas
nuts. This is,
politics.
yeah. I mean, I
Yeah.
feel like you were at the front lines, so
Yeah.
you were at the front lines. Like, I hope that that's not most people's experience, but it is still there. It is still
It
there.
is still there.
And to your point, like, your point is very taken. I want to say it's unacceptable. I think I'm coming more from the idea of like my friends, my sisters, my family. Like, we all would look at that and be like, completely unacceptable. Probably anybody listening to this is in the same boat. But you're right. Like, we live in Texas in 2026. And
Hmm.
it is still very accepted in these
And
places of power, even, right? So that's
yep,
very important to pay attention to.
it is frustrating. And I think what's most frustrating is like even men who are your allies
Mm.
and are very supportive will not speak up in a group
Yes,
of men.
yes, yes.
And until that changes, I
Mhm.
think,
Nothing else will.
right. And there are some men in my professional life who are amazing, who will just say, listen, guys, our standard is really low. Just don't be an a-hole. That's your standard. And right now you crossed over to the able standard.
You're in the bad territory. Um, I agree 100%. And it made me think about when you were saying how you were one of two women in those meetings and how, that changes the dynamic or I guess it doesn't change the dynamic enough, right? Because I think studies have shown that it takes at least three. Like
Oh,
it takes,
really?
yes, I've seen studies that say like when there's three women, the dynamic starts to change, or there's three people of color, then the dynamic starts to change. And it's so psychological, like, and it's so like, just social psychology type of stuff of like, if there's three people saying it, well, then it's not just as a one-off or, these two people who are outliers, like, for some reason, three is always the magic number, right? So yeah, I wonder about that. And I wonder about like, does that really change the dynamic? Because I think it does in some spaces, but to your point, really all of these spaces are special and different and have all of these
Mm-hmm.
complicated dynamics, like based on age and lived experience and, like literally your identity in those lived experiences. So like I've worked in spaces that were primarily women, for example, and I wonder, like, is this still patriarchal? Where's
I
the,
think it,
can it
I
be?
think, how many times have you heard a woman call another woman bitchy or difficult? When if a man said the exact same thing, they would
Yep.
be strong and insightful
Yes.
and clear thinking.
Exactly that. And then also, the intersections, of course, are always there and cannot be ignored. It's like you can be a woman and then there's women of color and there's queer women and there's trans women and there's all
Mm-hmm.
kinds of folks that have a different, identity that gets treated differently in these spaces. So there's no utopia, just by
No,
that fact. I mean, I think the matriarchy should be the next era, but that's just
I'm with you.
my opinion because, I think, of course, everybody, has all of their gifts to offer. But the truth is in this country, like we have come from a place and space where it's obviously been extremely male dominated. Like literally we can look back at the laws. I love the law books to
Mm-hmm.
just see like how our society has changed by law over time, not public opinion or mainstream whatever, but literally law, right? Like it says a lot about a society, like how we decide to codify rules of behavior, right?
Absolutely. I was shocked when I learned recently that it wasn't until the 70s or 80s where
Mm-hmm.
women could have their own bank accounts
Yeah.
or their own credit card or own their business and fill out forms. I was just like, what is
Bananas.
wrong with this country? Like,
Bananas. And it's probably more to do with like the business interest than anything.
oh, I'm sure, because in my mind, they're all afraid of women.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Which I want to go back to and say maybe it's a puritanical situation,
I was gonna
right?
say there's always that underlying piece too. I was gonna say where do you think that fear comes from? Why is it there? How can we start, really analyzing it to start dismantling it, right? Or not to start dismantling it, but carrying on the incredible traditions of, the people who've come before us to continue to dismantle it. Like what do you see, maybe psychologically or just as a pattern in the society or maybe even in your, day-to-day interactions with people who are clearly operating from, a different era of patriarchy. Like, what do you see as being the promise? Like, how can we make progress in this space?
I think it goes back to my stance on almost everything, which is just in small groups or one-on-one, raise the issue when it comes up. I was, within the last year, recently shocked by my brother who said to me, the only value women have is to be breeders. He didn't say breeders, but I mean,
Basically.
and I'm just like,
Wow.
dude, how
Yeah.
did you and I grow up in the same household?
Really,
Like,
truly. That's bananas.
what happened to you? I theorize that it is a lot of, is it right-wing radio, right-wing podcasting, whatever is du
The
jour
media
of,
stuff, yeah.
yeah. And I often think that oh, this is such a stereotype. Is this going to be sexist by saying it? I think,
Let's try
I think they're, okay. My
it.
apologies if people get offended by this. This is what is on my mind right now. I think men tend to be easier sucked into group thinking
Mm,
than women. And I think it's because women have had to deal with the patriarchy where we don't get the benefit of group thinking because even so
mm,
many women just acquiesce to the patriarchy without
mhm,
questioning it. And because of that, I think women are less inclined to group thinking because they don't know where it's safe to be a strong, independent, thoughtful woman.
yeah.
Whereas men never have to worry about that. So they
And their
just
safety
choose
is in the group.
safety in numbers.
That makes
Yep.
sense. Like their safety is in the group and our safety is not necessarily in the group, right? Like the group has oppressed and abused us in many instances and in most
And we have to
instances.
fight to find our group and our tribe that,
Yes,
because
exactly.
not every woman is safe, right? There's the women who
Yeah,
call other women all the sorts of words just for being strong and
exactly.
independent.
Absolutely, because they have bought into the patriarchy and
Yeah.
they're working to condition that woman to also be part of the patriarchy, right? Like, I don't know why, but I keep thinking, well, I know why. I just keep, while you're talking, it's making me think of, The Handmaid's Tale and
My
how,
favorite book from high school.
the women who are in, what's it called? Gilead, I think. The
Gilead.
women,
Hmm.
yeah, the women who are, like the wives in Gilead. It's
Yep.
like they have a certain level of what? Privilege,
Hmm.
stature, status.
They benefit from the
They
patriarchy.
benefit from the patriarchy. And if we can draw the same, kinds of parallels when we think about, for example, slavery, and white women who were benefiting from, from putting black people into literal, not even second class citizenship, just literally like human versus not human stature.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing, right? So it's like, of course there are going to be women like that. And, I take your point in that it's not so much about whether one sex is different than the other in terms of like gullibility or something like that. Or vulnerable. It's more like their lived experiences based on social standards and social structures makes it such that like our lived experience as women in this structure is different than men's lived experience. It's not because of us as individuals, like it's, our, born with abilities. It's literally like, well, this is how society conditions women. This is how society conditions men. And so they have a different, outlook by nature of that conditioning. I think I understand what you're saying.
You know, that made me think that I don't want to say, what am I trying to say? It makes it almost more important to speak up
Hmm.
when you
Mm-hmm.
realize the societal impact of it, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
I said, it's easier to, and maybe it's take the baby steps like I am taking, defend somebody else if it's not easy enough to defend you, because maybe that once removed situation makes it more palatable for the patriarchy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Instead of, I think men have a hard time when you try to explain how you feel about a situation, but if it's
Mm-hmm.
something else, they
Not
can
being
get their heads
confronted
around
with
it.
with feelings directly.
Oh my God, heaven forbid. When I am the first person to say that women are not the most emotional gender.
Mhm. Mhm.
And,
Emotionally reactive.
which I
Right.
guess is the patriarchy too, right? Because somehow they convinced us or
Yeah.
convinced the world that women are more emotional when they are clearly not.
Which is a classic like psychological thing of projection, right? It's like whatever you
Mm.
are, you project that onto other people because you're afraid that they're like you. That's all
Ugh.
that you know. So it's just classic, right? Like it's the same thing with racism. Like when people are like, "Oh, here are the stereotypes about Mexicans. They're lazy." I'm like, "Huh?
Yeah.
Help me understand that
Oh,
one." Like,
help me understand when I know from my Mexican American
literal.
husband
Yeah.
who, for years worked two jobs. Yeah,
Mhm.
sure. Okay.
Mhm. I mean, I'm just like, I don't even think people understand that concept in that culture. Like that's not a thing. Like it's just not a thing.
No,
Like
God, no.
they're confused by laziness. My grandmother, she's from like, the like I forget which generation it is. The silent generation, I think, where
Yeah.
it's like just shut up and work like that. So she's,
Yep.
Mexican and that. And combined,
Yep.
like she looks around at like younger generations like, what's happening? Like she's just like very confused. Like, why are they not constantly cleaning? I'm so confused.
But that makes me wonder, is it like that expression of you show who you are, not from your words, but your actions? Is that what she's trying to
Mm,
say, right? Like show
yeah,
them
yeah,
because that's who you are and that's where you come from. Which
exactly,
I
absolutely.
agree. All immigrants tend to be very diligent, very hardworking,
Hmm.
trying to stay out of everybody's business and just make the life that they want to create for themselves.
Exactly, absolutely. So I agree with you in that like one of the ways that we can start, dismantling the patriarchy, if you will, or continue that work is one-on-one, especially for people like you who are in spaces. I mean, not even especially, but I mean, it's just such a good example of like, you are an incredibly brilliant woman who has like this incredible position where you can influence these people who otherwise would not be exposed to somebody with your worldview,
Yep.
somebody with your lived experience, and somebody who can so articulately and brilliantly explain to them like why they're stupid or why they're wrong, right? And so
Oh yeah,
I think it's such an incredible opportunity, and you use it, and I love
I
that.
do.
But
And
everybody has that opportunity in some way or another for sure, and especially as it relates to themselves. I think one of the things that I'm picking up on is like, not only are you protecting other people, and that seems like it's, maybe an easier or more opportune place for you to be able to actually have impact, right? Versus when it's related to yourself. But like, do we also have more blind spots when it comes to us? Because I can very much relate to the fact that like I'm a protector. So whenever somebody else is like even slightly,
hmm
coming for somebody else, I'm like, like, that's for not
yep.
right because this and that. And,
hmm
like it's so easy for me to get into like protector warrior mode. But when it comes to me, usually I will probably, I'm more likely to make excuses than to jump to those kinds of same conclusions that I would for somebody else.
I have, I one completely agree. Two, I have started using this technique,
Mm.
and sometimes it works. I say, I'm really confused by that. My people in like the year 900, before the United States was even a country, allowed women to own property, rule,
Yes.
are warriors,
Oh, yes.
and were treated equally to men. So can you explain this to me? Because I don't think I understand.
Yeah, not you knowing your history too. Ugh. You must have them so shook. I love it. Um, I heard the other day that like amnesia of our history is a tool of white supremacy, and I was like, oh fuck, like
What a great expression. It's so true.
yes, and I'm like so true because like think like just feel how powerful that is right now. You being able to be like, let me quote my history and give you some clue about it as well. But yeah, it is confusing and it's interesting how, relatively young this country still is, but also like where we came from. Like you talked about the puritanical values and it's like we literally came, as a country anyways, um, from Puritans. Puritans are the ones who eventually, built the laws and things like that of this country.
And that's right.
Uh,
They were a very heavily religious group who had
exactly.
views that were very intense.
And when I remember that, it helps me understand where I am. It really
Yeah.
does. And when I look at my ancestry and understand that it is of, both indigenous and, colonizer European, background, um, it helps me understand also why this feels so strange to me, right? Where it's like,
Yeah.
okay, there's one little sect of people that had like these very intense beliefs, and that doesn't even represent, to your point, all of Europe,
Yep.
right? Like just because I have some European background doesn't mean that like I'm a Puritan by
Right?
by ancestry, by lineage, by any stretch of the imagination. The indigenous side of me is, like completely opposed to most of everything that was imposed upon us, right? And so it makes me think too, though, like each of us knowing who we are, where we came from, what we're building on, the ancestry that we're building on. I love that that can be a part of dismantling the patriarchy, right? Because that tells us if you know who you really are and where you come from, you know that like you are not supposed to be diminished
Yeah.
and be made lesser than just because of your, gender, basically, right? So
You
there's
make
that
such an
part.
interesting
Mhm.
point about the dismissiveness of it. And I
Mhm.
just realized that some of my techniques that I use to counter it are so that I am not like them because I
Yes.
don't want to be dismissive or make them feel bad because I think most of the time they
Mm.
do not know what they're doing.
Mm.
So it's that fine line of that Nietzsche quote, be careful when you're fighting monsters you don't want so that you don't become one yourself,
Yes.
right? And it's a delicate line. How are you effective of raising the issue of the patriarchy? I'm
Mm.
not even going to say changing their minds, but just
Yeah.
raising it that this has occurred
The awareness
without
piece
it
of it. Yeah. Just step
be
one.
step one, because it is so reactive.
Mhm.
And if I hear if I hear a man say, but I have a wife, I have a mother, I have
I
sisters,
have a wife. Come
again,
on.
I like to think a very nonviolent, pacifistic type of person, but I might throw something. If I hear
Mhm.
somebody saying it, or even seeing it on television, like, but I have a
Mm.
wife, I have a mother. And I think that was exactly the response that the hockey team did was, oh, but here's my wife and here's my daughter. And
Really.
you know what?
My
No.
question to them would be, you have a wife and you have a daughter. How do you treat them? Do you treat them with more respect than you're showing me right now?
Fuck no. Sorry. Did you completely?
But also like, do you want them to grow up in a world where men treat women this way?
Yeah.
Because, like I hear your point in terms of like, we need to make it, or maybe we need to, in times, if we want to change minds and hearts, like help them get to that place, right?
Yeah.
Um, but, I, first of all, just want to recognize like how gracious, empathetic and kind that is of you to take that stance, right? Because patriarchy was created and installed by force.
Yep.
And there was no empathy or kindness in terms of, even recognizing women as equals to men in
Mm-hmm.
our founding documents. It says all men are created equal.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's intentional. Like they
Oh
didn't say
yeah.
all people, they didn't say all beings. They could have used a million other words, but they chose to say all men are created equal. So the fact that we're even having this conversation about like how do we use kindness and empathy to change hearts and minds, like just that is a kindness in itself.
It is, but isn't it also basic psychology, right? Like
Yeah, yeah.
you gain more when with through positive reinforcement than you do elsewise otherwise.
100%. And that's really the thing is like, what is our goal? Is our goal to shame and blame, or is our goal to actually change, and to
Yeah.
actually, shift this dichotomy? And I would say it's definitely the latter. But at the same time, we have to figure out what's safe. And so I wanted to
Mm-hmm.
frame it in that way because, I keep coming back in my mind to the thing you said, like, I'm really like I don't know, I feel very like affirmed in the fact in a way that like even Tessa finds it easier to protect other people than herself, right?
Yeah.
And I think that says a lot actually for me personally because um we're all out here doing it on our own. And like you said, most of the
Yeah.
time we're one, if not two, women in the room trying to
Mm-hmm.
navigate this sexist, patriarchal, misogynistic world.
Mm-hmm.
And, being a woman of color, I've often been both the only woman and the only person of color in a
Yep.
space. And you have no refuge, technically, right? And
Mm-hmm.
people interpret your actions as something other than, the intent that's behind them, so quickly, so easily.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it makes me really think about like, how do we protect each other then? Because I know that, if you are saying it's easier to protect someone else than another, then there's no way we can expect everyone to be their own warrior. And frankly, it might just be an impossible tactic because when you do that, again, people villainize you.
Mm-hmm.
People try to paint you as this horrible monster for some reason.
Yep.
Like again, the power struggles are real, all the things.
Mm-hmm.
And everything's working against you in those ways. So I love that you talked about, this male ally and him actually, having the balls to say something, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
having the courage to speak up, um, to other men and
And to
admit.
be
Mhm.
fair, I do want to say that in my experience, queer men are
Mm.
fantastic allies
Yeah.
from a general standpoint.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what I'm saying. We have to build bridges. I love that point of like you often talk about like people who have been othered. And
Mm-hmm.
I love that framing too because it's like even though we might not have the same gender or the same sexuality or the same technical lived experience, we are all connected in a way by the oppression, actually,
Mm-hmm.
which is interesting because we know that one of the biggest tactics has always been to divide and conquer, right?
Yep.
So I love the idea of allyship and thinking about like how we stand up for one another. And maybe the way to bring down the patriarchy is really thinking about how we bring down all of the things, all of the isms, all of the phobias, right? Like if a queer man is standing up for you because you're a woman and you're experiencing misogyny, like you need to be right there standing up for him when somebody's saying something terrible about queer men in another space,
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
and people often do those comments, not all out in the open, not all
Yep.
in front of everybody, but in these side conversations. And if you are witnessing that, that means that the people who are saying those things, they think that you are like them. They think it's
Mm-hmm.
safe for them to, be misogynistic in
Mm-hmm.
front of you because they assume that you're misogynistic or racist or homophobic or transphobic or queerphobic. Like that is what they are making an assumption about you. So one of the things that I like to think about is, you know, as much as I don't want to necessarily care what everyone thinks about me, I do care to correct the record, right?
I understand that as a blonde, blue-eyed person that everybody
Mhm.
assumes is not an immigrant because I spent so much time controlling my accents.
Mhm.
They assume that because I am blonde and blue-eyed, I am like them.
Yep.
And I will quickly say, I came to this country on a boat. I was born in a foreign country to a mother who is of another foreign country.
Mm.
It, then I came to the United States. It does not make me like you.
Mm. But you also have so much power
I
in,
have power in being able to look like I fit in.
yeah,
Yeah.
and to even benefit from that presumption, right?
Oh yeah. That's a
Like,
privilege. I fully
yeah.
recognize it. Yeah.
But also it's so fascinating to hear you talk about like how you use that privilege too, because you can correct the record and say like, no, we're not the same, right?
Yeah.
But you can also use that privilege at times to be like, we are the same in some ways, even if you're not saying it out loud, but like,
Mhm.
if somebody's willing to open up to you in a way that they wouldn't to a person of color, for example, then
Mhm.
you have the opportunity to have a conversation that none of us ever would. Um, and
And
so,
I
and I
think
love
that's
that you're
what's
using it. You're using it to the
I
advantage of the collective.
I do, and I do it a lot, whether it's to support people of color, to support other immigrants, to support the queer community, to support other women,
Mhm.
to support
And
indigenous people.
yeah.
Yeah.
And how do we get and gain more allies, I think is the question. One of the things that I observe in my lived experience is that people of color, both immigrant and, US born, brown people especially, are just like, they're just working. They're just
Yeah.
in the struggle. They're worried about their next, meal, their next bill, the next gas money. I always say, like, if we're worried about gas money, like, we ain't doing enough. Like, we gotta level up the
That is,
people. Like,
for me, when it is hard times or when just on a day-to-day basis, I don't want to join a group or a thought process that feels like work. And I feel like
mm,
if you're fighting
yep.
or you're trying
Hmm.
actively to move a stone to another spot, and it's a big stone that you can't move by yourself,
Transition an
it's exhausting.
entire, system that has been,
Yes.
fostered over
For
hundreds of
centuries in this
years.
country. Yes.
Exactly.
Right? So, and I
Yeah.
think maybe that's why I take the approach that I do, because it has to
Mm,
come from a place where I feel comfortable, which means it has to be my belief and in the potential of people, my optimism for making everybody better and collectively better.
mm,
Because for me, being better means you're not attacking other people and you're building something in a way that makes you think about your community before you think about yourself.
yeah. Yeah.
And
And
I get
and
that that makes me an outlier, because I think a lot of people, especially in this country, think about themselves first. Often because of necessity, right? Like you said, because they're worried about their gas money.
sure.
They're worried that if they get sick, that's the end of their
Well,
financial
see,
stability.
this is why I've always loved social psychology the most, because in my mind, it aligns so perfectly and helped explain so much of my actual lived witnessed experiences, right, in life. And to
Yeah.
be able to be like, oh, this makes sense why people, like, as individuals, this makes sense why they're acting this way, but also societally. And so when you say that, it just screams to me like, and it's on purpose. Like, the systems of oppression are keeping people in a mindset of survival, right? Of
Mhm.
literal, like, life or death, individualistic survival. And so
Mhm.
I think that for me, what I wonder is, for anyone listening to this podcast, is there a way for us to guide people in, like, taking stock of their life and figuring out how they can do their part? Because what I hear you saying, Tessa, is that you are specially positioned to have a specific, like, impact, and you're taking that opportunity and carrying your values and acting out of your values in the space and privilege that you have. And
Mhm.
so I think that everyone can do that if they're mindful of it, right? So, like, maybe you have, I don't know, you have, 3 kids, you're, working 2 jobs, and you're a single mother, and, you are in the struggle because, as we have recognized in this episode, like, the world is not set up for you.
Correct.
And so you're struggling against all the odds, right? And, I don't know what else to say except Godspeed, and, like, good for you, and, find your tribe, and I hope you have a supportive, community around you, and, or you can find those people, but
I
also,
think it's
go
also
ahead.
a good time to remember
Hmm.
that maybe this is a psychological thing. You can tell me where the academic thoughts are on this. That it's easier for me to speak up, but I think it could be just as easy for somebody else to speak up if they think about it as a long game situation, right? It's
Yes,
easy to be angry and
yes,
say everything that is in your head in a
yep,
short term,
hmm,
but it
yep,
doesn't move things in the long term. And
exactly.
that's why even those small, like, moments when you speak up, perhaps it is easier to speak up in support of somebody else,
Hmm.
because you don't become the target. That person has become the target because they're not speaking up about it either. And you can slowly work to change the system over the long term. Whereas if you blow up, sometimes I find that the patriarchy like locks down and becomes more
Yep.
intense.
Yeah, no, 100%. And it's about safety, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so the fact that you have the safety to do that is another part of the calculation. And
Yeah.
I think that's really where it takes me is like, if you're this woman who is in the struggle, it's not easy. You have to do all the things to take care of your kids, to take care of yourself, to make sure you have food on the table, roof overhead, all the basics, right? And you're fighting against the
Mm-hmm.
systems. And you can still have an impact in some
Mm-hmm.
way. And even if it's not something that you do, on a day-to-day basis, but you carry that value with you and you understand that, like, just like you're saying, even one conversation can make an impact. It's like a drop of water in the larger, pool that's building the flood that we're building type of thing, right? If you
Yeah.
can understand that you're part of this larger collective movement and that every, conversation or like opportunity to, you know, share your actual lived experience with someone is powerful. Like your story
Mm-hmm.
is so powerful, for example, right? Like if you are this woman, then you have all kinds of stories about how
Oh yeah.
systems of oppression have
And I think
affected you. So you can
it's
share those.
important to, tell your kids, tell your nieces, tell your
Yes,
friends,
yes,
because if we are
yes,
silent about it amongst ourselves,
yes.
it
We're
doesn't help
contributing.
us.
We're
Yep.
contributing to the oppression, the systems of oppression,
Mm-hmm.
actually. So I think, just like all kinds of abuse, um, abuse dies in the light is what I always like to say. And so just exposing it, like it might seem like, there's no way I can like go be a part of like a large, I don't know, I always get jealous of like the people who are out in the streets, like protesting. I'm like, oh, they're so cool. They're doing the thing, But you're right, like, especially at different times in your life, like you have to figure out like, and what is your part now? What's your role
Mm-hmm.
now? And it could literally be that. Like, I was just with my two nieces yesterday. One is 16, one is 8. And, the 16-year-old, like, I mean, both of them actually, but like she said something that made me so proud where she was just like, I'm not taking this person's calls after like 10 or whatever. And I was like,
Good for
you,
her.
like you practicing a boundary at 16 with an adult, like
Oh,
I worship
that
you.
takes a lot of strength. I'll be
Truly. And it just made
kudos to
me,
her.
it made me so inspired and hopeful. And it made me just think from what you were saying just now about how even the little seeds that you plant can grow into
Mm-hmm.
mighty, mighty trees, probably
Yep.
long after you're gone. And so literally just like if you're raising sons, if you're raising daughters, all of them need to be feminists, right? If you're
Yep.
raising a non-binary child, like everyone needs to be a feminist. And so you're a mother than like literally that. Like just talking to your kids could be an incredible seed that we all benefit from, years and years later. So I think you're right. It's not so much what we have to do. Like when you were talking about like blowing up, for example, it made me think about like when you're young,
Mm-hmm.
and you really want to like, you're really idealistic and you want to tell everybody how wrong they are and how right you are, right?
Yeah.
And it made me think like just this kind of theory of change actually is what we're talking about because, I was 100% that person and I still struggle with like being, defensive and wanting to like prove a point and wanting to win, the thing, the argument, the discussion, the debate, right? Um, but I've come to realize that, or I'm working on realizing, growing to realize that is that what I really want? Is that what I really want? Is it what I want to, do I want to win? Because winning means that I'm affirmed and that I'm smarter or better or something. Or do I want my peace today? Or do I want my health? Or do I want,
Yeah.
this relationship, to go somewhere else and to grow past this? Or do I value, I don't know, just literally my day, my moment. Like, There's so many
Right.
other things that you can prioritize. And if and also to be effective, right? Like just in a utilitarian kind of perspective. To your point,
Yep.
if we are actually going to change the tides, it's going to be
Mm-hmm.
drop by drop by drop, and it has to
Yep.
actually be effective drops, not, ooh, you showed that person, you tore that person down, and now they lock down even harder. They double down
Yeah.
even harder, and now you have even a bigger enemy or bigger challenge in changing the hearts and minds of the people that you are shutting down.
And I know that I don't take the lash out approach
Mm-hmm.
frequently, if at all. And it's because I was raised by a feminist who suppressed her feminism around her husband and her son.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, she's very feminist. And she always told me, never allow someone to have power over you. It was
Yep.
usually never allow a man to have power over you.
Mm-hmm.
And I still use that mindset every single day, right? Like,
Love it.
is it worth me raising my opinion in a way that is, say, aggressive
Mm-hmm.
when that just shows that I've allowed this person, this man to anger me, and I don't want to give a man the notion that they have the power to anger me.
Mm. And see that even that, like we started this conversation talking about power and how
Mm-hmm.
patriarchy is about power. And now we're talking about the tactics, right, of dismantling
Yeah.
patriarchy and how power is a factor in that. And I love that reframe because, in my experience, I think that being of a people who, have experienced so much
Mm-hmm.
just, intersecting
Are
in constant forms of oppression, like,
still
and,
occurring.
and, and ongoing, absolutely. I think that one of the coping mechanisms has been like, I want to take that power back. And it feels like power
Mm.
sometimes when
Yeah.
you are owning somebody and saying, no, you're wrong and I'm right, and so that, and I mean, there's so much complicated psychology in there. there's so much, ego in there, but what you're saying, I think is also so powerful, really speaks and resonates with me because I 100% like at this point in my life, I 100% like relate to that so much more than, like trying to prove somebody wrong, which felt like power at some point in my life, right? Like
It
now
does.
knowing that I love myself, knowing that like I'm operating out of my values, knowing that like I'm not going to let this person, I like to say I can't be bothered.
Uh,
It's just one of my
isn't
new
it?
favorite things to say. I can't
It
be
is
bothered.
so powerful for
And
yourself to be
yes,
unbothered.
yes. And so you just like feeling unbothered, it's like people are trying me and I'm unbothered. And that
Yep.
feels like a whole new form of power. So I love that your mom, was giving you that because the other thing that it really brought up for me was as a advocate against, domestic violence and intimate partner violence, sexual assault and stalking, that whole education that I received in that world that I'm very grateful for taught me about the psychology of abuse, and the psychology of abuse says that abuse is the power over another, right? It's using any means possible to actually assert power over another. And so the fact that your mother planted that little seed in you that's so, blooms so beautifully and gorgeously, and who is Tessa, I feel like that is such a beautiful seed for us to be passing on to all of our children, to all of
Mm-hmm.
the people around us. They don't have to be children. Like they're fertile grounds in people of
Oh
all
yeah.
ages still. But like even just framing the idea of like, what is power over? What does that look like? And what does it
Mm-hmm.
mean when you,
Mm-hmm.
get sucked in to somebody's gaslighting or they're baiting for God's sake? Like this is
Oh my God. Yeah.
such, such a tool of the abusers and the oppressors is to bait you, right? So that they can have you show your ass, right? So like,
Yep.
if you look crazy and emotional, I mean, good God, like, the stereotype of the angry
Oh,
black woman, for example, right? Like
the
trying to
worst
overcome that one
stereotype.
when you should absolutely be angry and completely 1000% justified. But like, if you show your anger, okay, well now you're showing that you are that stereotype. Like, oh God, it's just such a catch-22 and it just shows
It is.
the power situation. So thinking about it in terms of, no, you don't get to have power over me is actually incredibly empowering. So thank you for sharing that, Tessa. I love that.
Thank you. I want to make clear that it is not denying what is happening. It
Hmm.
is not ignoring what is happening. It is
Right.
choosing peace for yourself,
Yep. Yeah, and you can recognize it, but you don't have to say anything to anyone else. That's the other beauty. of
right? Like I do,
Yeah.
so I would say it's probably important, even if you don't say it to the person who's being
Mhm.
patronizing,
Yes.
tell your friends,
Yes.
tell people that that
Process.
person knows.
Or
Yep.
do whatever you have to do to process it for yourself.
Yep.
Like that could be telling your journal, telling your
Mhm.
therapist, telling your pet, telling
Yep.
yourself in the bathtub. Like you can
Mhm.
process these things without having an external experience with this person because you recognize that they are trying to get you into an emotion. This is what I really like started to tell myself. Oh, I see you. You're trying to get me into an emotional state so that you can manipulate me.
Yep.
And when you
I've
see
also
the writing on the wall, then you can avoid, falling into the trap.
absolutely a trick that I have recently started trying and is I have found very effective is instead of saying I am feeling, say
Hmm.
angry or I'm feeling frustrated, I feel like I would like to, you know, punch this guy in the throat. I instead say to myself, Tessa feels
Mm.
whatever it is, right? And
Hmm.
when my mind hears it that way, it allows me to process that information much more efficiently, I think, because if
Mm.
I say that I feel this way to myself,
It becomes
it
you.
it becomes me and it becomes something
Hmm.
that I immediately want to work through in a
Mm.
situation where sometimes you don't have the time to process the emotion at the time. So if I say in
Mm.
my head to myself, Tessa is feeling super pissed off right now, I'm like, okay, it's out there. I've acknowledged it. I'm going to process it later. But at the moment, I can react in a way that is more effective, leaving me free from having somebody have power over me and allowing me to protect my peace and protect whatever issue that has been raised, whether it's sexism, racism, homophobia.
Hmm.
Have I
I
missed
love
any?
it.
Yeah.
Transphobia,
Transphobia. Hmm.
all the phobias. They're so afraid of us. I don't know why they're so scared, but
See,
that
and that's the thing, right? Like we're the ones that actually have the power because you're
yeah,
right. I think they are absolutely afraid of us.
absolutely, 100%. I mean, why would you have to assert power over another unless you're afraid of them?
Yep.
That's the way I think about it. And when you said, Tesla feels, it made me think about what I've been using recently, which is something I've taken from Buddhist teachings in terms of recognizing emotions as visitors. And so
Mhm.
they're not you. They're not who
Yep.
you are, right? And there's two ways that they talk about this. One is like you're sitting in your space and then you're like, oh, anger is here. Come sit down. Let's have a cup of tea, right? And it's like, how you doing,
Yeah.
anger? Like, and just recognizing
Yeah.
anger is here. Anger wants to be here for a little while. Let's let anger be here. Let's talk to anger and let's let
Mhm.
anger leave when it's time to leave too.
Yep.
So just recognizing it as a visitor. And then the other one that I think I love even more is the idea that like emotions are like the weather and you are the sky.
Oh, I love this imagery.
So yeah, so when you're thinking about emotions, you can be like, okay, here's a little storm cloud. The anger is coming up in like this little dark little stormy cloud, and it's like, but I am the sky. I am not this cloud. Like this cloud is going to pass. This storm is going to pass, and I'm still going to be here in my great expansiveness, right? And the
Yeah.
sun will come out, and that's also not me. I'm the sky. Like everything is just a passing cloud, a passing bit of weather in your great expansive.
Oh, I love that.
Hmm. So I try to use both. I've been trying to use it with my baby girl too, to be like, okay, anger's here. Let's sit with it. Let's welcome the anger. let the anger be here, or in your case, like you were saying, like maybe it's not right now, maybe it's like, oh, I see anger has arrived and I'll be right with you. I have
Yep.
to finish doing some things and then I can come tend to you like a good host.
Yep.
So,
But I say we have to remember these are all our choices, right? Like we
hmm
could choose whether or not to lash out and be angry. We could choose to acknowledge our anger. We could choose to acknowledge our anger and handle it later, or we could choose to remain angry but not allow
yeah.
others to see our anger.
Yeah, or choose what power feels like to you too, right? Like
Yeah.
for me, I resonate today with this idea that like, no, I'm not going to let people get a rise out of me because they don't deserve it. And it's not for
Mm,
them, right? Like that's what I resonate with
yep.
right now. But I mean, like I said, in the past, I would have been like, yeah, my power is, I'm going to prove you wrong. Argue the house down. I'm going to make a fool out of you, like whatever, and that felt like power to me at the time. So I think power can be all kinds of things, right? And
Oh
growth is
yeah.
a thing that we need to recognize, changes over time. And, you could be at so many different places, and I'm excited to know, like, my later phases in this. Like, I feel like I'm always jealous of old people who just don't give a fuck. Like, they don't care what's happening, who's saying what. Like, I'm like, oh, life goals, honestly. Like, literally, I'm trying to get there as
Yeah.
soon as I possibly can. Like, they have selective hearing, but it's like for their peace. I love it. I'm obsessed with
Same,
that.
right? Like, I think a lot of people mistake people who are unbothered for not
Mhm.
caring. And I
Mhm.
believe that they do care. They just prioritize their personal peace the most.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on your definition of caring, right? Like,
Hmm.
one of the things I've been thinking about recently is Sex and the City, Samantha Jones saying, I love you, but I love me more. And
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
like,
Oh, that's
so
so good.
good. Such a great,
So good.
yeah, commentary on feminism, but, and sexuality and the idea that like you can care, right? Like
Hmm.
I can see someone struggling and I can say, I have empathy. I feel for this person who's struggling, and also saying like, and I have my own struggles and I'm going to tend to those first.
Yeah. Something I have taken from my mother-in-law is if she sees someone suffering, say we're in a car and a car is
Mhm.
broken down on the side of the road,
Mhm.
she will always say, pobrecito or pobrecita, meaning
Mhm.
you poor thing, right? Essentially.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
I'm like, you know what? I think acknowledging that frequently, because you are always going to encounter people who are
Mhm.
having troubles in a day, opens you up to more sympathy and empathy, which I
Mhm.
think then clears yourself up to realizing that you too deserve sympathy and empathy.
Mhm. Yeah, such a good point. And it's hard to live in a world where there's so much suffering, right?
Yeah.
Um, Especially if you're an empath, like I most definitely identify as such. And my grandma Vicky, Victoria Briseña Santiana, I love her name. She
It's a great name.
isn't it? It is so good. And
Yeah.
she would use her initials all the time because she liked her name too. She would do all three. And anytime she would see an accident, she would see somebody, struggling on the road and she wasn't able to like, do something herself or whatever besides this. She was a very like Catholic woman and she'd make the sign of the cross and she would like send them a little blessing. And even though I'm not Catholic, I don't, affiliate with that religion. I don't know. There's something about that of just like sending somebody a blessing and wishing them the best that
Yeah.
has been feeling really good to me lately of being like, I might not have all the power in the world and capacity, to save everyone, which it often feels like. By the way, as a woman, for some reason, that's what I'm supposed to be doing.
Uh,
So just recognizing that part of the patriarchy. Um, just sending, good energy and having impact where I can. I think that, the martyrdom is something that we've talked about before,
oh, yes.
that I feel is really important for women to be mindful of because we are taught that like, not only should we make life and children and raise them and, care for all their needs and now, make all the money and do all the things and, like there's a lot of pressure to be a woman today, and then look
Mm-hmm.
perfect for Instagram, right?
Mm-hmm.
And have your own brand and all the things. Like, there's so many pressures, right? But at the same time, if you recognize that, like, that message is coming from the inside, right?
The call is coming
The
from inside.
call is coming from inside and it was planted there. No, make no
Mm-hmm.
mistake, right? Like somebody else planted it there, but that's where it is now. That's where it lives in you. Um, just recognizing that, just the awareness of that gives you some power to say yes or no.
I would
Do I choose
100%
this? Do you consent to
agree.
this? You know? Mhm.
As a woman who is intentionally child free,
Mhm.
I heard I would say, from my 20s on, but you're exactly the type of person who should be having children because you recognize all this stuff. And I'm like, no, no, not my obligation.
Right.
I do not want to be responsible for screwing up a human being.
And you should be able to consent one way or the other, right? Like you get to decide,
Absolutely.
do you or do you not want that responsibility? It's a huge responsibility. It's
It is. And
such
I
a
heard
huge responsibility.
the most about it from other women. And I'm like,
And do you see that part?
no,
See,
so
that part to
sexist.
me is so interesting. It takes me right back to Handmaid's Tale. It takes me
Yep.
right back to the women in red who started, what's the word? Like they started socializing each other. And that is the
Yep.
most powerful cult tactic that you can possibly in what's the word that you can garner, right? Because
Yep.
if you have the subjects keeping each other in line, you don't even have to do it top down. Like that is some effective management, but I'm just saying, like it's a cult
Right. Like,
tactic.
I mean, clearly my brother, who has no power over me, thinks that
Mhm.
I am a worthless human being or worthless human woman because of it. But
Mm.
we all know the truth because, here I am not doing anything to convince these younger women, but now I have like this whole brethren of people's children who are like, no, I want to be like Tessa. I too
Mm.
want to be child free. I'm like, this is,
Yes, yes. The power of just being your fabulous self. Oh my gosh.
yeah,
I mean, we forgot to mention that part when we were talking about the ways to dismantle patriarchy. That is the most beautiful, like, chef's kiss way to beat the patriarchy is to just be the phenomenal woman that you are and let everyone witness it.
right. And isn't that, I mean, don't they say that about revenge too, right? Like, a happy
Mm.
wife is the best revenge.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Absolutely. Yes. So just live
I
in
think,
your full greatness. Absolutely.
which is probably, a subtle way for us to all go after the
Yeah.
patriarchy, like a
Yeah.
little rebellion, because I do love a little rebellion a
Me
lot.
too. I
I
feel
do
like
love a
your
polite
life is a
rebellion.
testament to that.
But it's so important, right? To like just be happy living your life and not allowing all these other opinions to come for you.
Yeah. I heard a really good thing that I won't be able to quote or anything, but essentially, trying to paraphrase, I think it was Alan Watts, essentially said something to the effect of, you are it. Like, your life is the story. Your life is the result, like the purpose, right? Like you're living your life is the purpose that you're seeking, basically. And it really resonated with me because it made me think about how like we all in this society are trying to attain something and we don't even know what that thing really is. We talk about it as like success or status or purpose, right?
Yeah.
But it just changed my perspective in a major shifting type of way to think actually the life that you're living is the thing. it is your
It
purpose in
is.
itself, right? And so just how you walk through this world, how you present, what you represent is so incredibly powerful, and you can influence, so many people without ever even saying a direct word to them, actually, just by being you.
And I wonder if we all just become the best version of ourselves. Do we ultimately, if everyone who is othered becomes their best version of themselves, do we then somehow quash the voice of the patriarchy?
Yes, 100%. Look, here's here's low key my conclusion right now overall. I'm so glad we got to this point in the conversation because it all connects for me, and that the work that we have in front of us right now is just to heal ourselves. That's it.
Yeah.
It's that simple, and it's that complicated, right? So like when I see other people struggling, I say, blessings to that person, and I hope that they find their path, because we all have a path to walk, and we're all just trying to find that path, right? But their healing work is theirs, and my healing work is mine. And even when you're talking about like helping other people, it kind of makes me uncomfortable thinking about like, oh, helping these men be less sexist. Like it makes me uncomfortable because I'm like, should I have to do that? Like that feels like it's their shit to deal with, right? But at the same time, it also reminds me, just thinking about you doing it and how lovely and eloquently you do it, it makes me think like actually Tessa is just being Tessa. Tessa's
Yep.
already done what Tessa needs to do to be the phenomenal woman that Tessa is. And Tessa is actually in her whole self, like in the version of her wholeness and her greatness, just being Tessa in these spaces where Tessa exists. And so again, it all goes back to the way out is in. If you're, focused on your inner being and becoming, the most phenomenal version of yourself, then you're going to be phenomenal no matter where you go and who you talk to.
And I completely agree that it is not our responsibility, but I think it is also our responsibility to protect other people like us.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
if we
yeah.
can't, and I also have to think that my inner voice is saying things like, when I'm speaking up in my way about it, my inner voice is like, oh, you poor little boy, I'm sorry people hurt you, and I'm sorry this is how it ended up, but this is not how you treat people.
Yeah,
And I just want to
yeah,
remind you that people deserve more than what you're giving them.
yeah, yeah. And just basically, again, it's more like correcting the record versus anything.
Yeah.
It's just like, no, that's not acceptable, right? And again, I think that's a beautiful testament of your inner being. Like, I don't know exactly how you got to be such a phenomenal person, but you are. And when you express it to people, you're expressing it from a place of wholeness and greatness, right? You're saying like, no, we don't treat people that way. That's not, it's just not acceptable. That's not what we do. That's below the standard. And so you're just letting them know. I love it.
And I've thought about this a lot of how I got here. And I think a lot of it is spending my formative years in Europe, coming to the United States, wondering, why am I here?
Mm.
I have asked my parents since for a refund. Did not work out. But then realizing
Money
like,
back.
right? But I was involved enough as a kid and probably, like a 40-year-old, 5-year-old, that I understood what was wrong, what was right. My belief system was very Swedish. And so walking into a Southern patriarchal society, I was like, yeah, none of this. And I don't know if I'm sure as a kid, I probably kept a lot of it to myself because I went so far as never thinking because I didn't think my parents were a safe space. I didn't share anything with them. And so I dealt with a lot on my own, and then I figured out which strategies worked because I'm too much of an observer and too analytical. So I don't wish that on
Never,
anybody.
never too much. You just are an observer and a tactical, brilliant strategist. Period.
And it works. And I don't think
Hmm.
we should have to be that way in life. Ideally, we shouldn't have to be that way in life, but I find that it's much easier to remain unbothered and protect my own peace by being that way. And
Mm.
that's what works for me.
And it seems to be what's more effective, as we talked about too. So the reason I keep saying that is because I'm a Capricorn. I'm a very utilitarian type, right? So I'm also
Yeah.
like, what's going to work, what's not going to work. And so I love that you, even as a child, were really like trying to just figure it out in terms of like what's actually going to be effective versus, operating from a place of whatever, like letting your emotions lead or whatever, you could have fallen into lots of different traps, right? And so, yeah, I'm with you. I think that we all need to take stock of like, first of all, recognizing that patriarchy is very alive and well and that it impacts all of us on so many different levels. Seeing and being aware of how it impacts the other people in our lives and figuring out like how we can have impact, whether it's just, you know, speaking up in these smaller conversations, whether it be for other people or yourself or, even giving, kind of counsel to the people that you love, planting seeds for the next generation or even for this one, or even generations past. Like I've done so much mindset work with, my grandmother who's 84 years old.
Yeah.
Or whether it's just literally making more time and space and investment in yourself, in your healing, and stepping into your full, like, greatness, your full real life self, your wholeness, all of
And I hope
that part.
everyone chooses to do it in a way that works for them,
Exactly. Yes.
right?
Yes.
Like make sure it feels natural. It fits
Hmm.
what you want to see. It fits with who you want to be. And
Hmm.
if all this fails, let's remember the words of the great character Moira Rose from Schitt's Creek, who said, and I'm sure other people have said it too, never let the bastards get you down.
Yes. I love it. Absolutely that. And we're all in it together. The more
We
allies, the
are.
better. So I think we just keep on building, what we've been doing here, building our uplift, kind of army, if you will, the uplift movement, and spreading that joy and healing and kindness. It all comes back to that really. And so, this was a beautiful conversation. Thank you so much, Tessa, for being here, being the phenomenal woman that you are, and showing us your way and how you're having impact in the world and being an inspiration. We love you so much.
Oh, I love you.
Until next time, y'all, stay uplifted. Bye bye.